Hello and welcome to our 2022 Community Grants Information Session. I put together some slides here to cover some of the top line details about the 2022 grant cycle. So I was planning to just go through the slides relatively quickly. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat line, and I do have plenty of time set aside at the end for questions and answers. What we're going to cover in this session, I'm going to remind you about your organizational eligibility, make sure everyone understands what we're using as our decision-making criteria, let you know about the two types of grants that we have available in 2022, review some of the questions that are in each version of the application, and remind you of the resources that are available to assist you. So, is your organization eligible? The primary requirement for eligibility is that you are providing a service for people living or working in Park County. If you are already a qualified 501c3 or you have a fiscal sponsor that's a 501c3, you are good to go. But we can also give funding to public entities that are located in Park County or have projects and programs in Park County. We do fund organizations year to year, but if you were funded in a previous grant cycle, you need to be up to date on any final grant reports that are due before we can fund you again this year. And I'll talk a little later, I'll talk about when the due dates are for those. So our process for making funding decisions. I always like to lead with the detail that I facilitate this program, but I am not, in fact, a voting member of the grants committee. Those decisions are made. The grants committee is a subcommittee of our volunteer board of directors. What they will be looking at when they're evaluating your program is not only your program design, but how well you complete the application and are able to convey to us the compelling points of your application in your program. So we do ask that you answer clearly but succinctly in order to make it a little bit easier and not force folks to spend lots of time crunching to a tiny word limit. I do give a pretty generous word limit, but please don't feel that you need to use that entire amount. Say what you need to say. You don't need to use every available character. We also ask that you really pay attention to completing the budget form. If you have questions about how to use that form, please ask, preferably well in advance so we have time to talk about it. So that is about the application itself. And then in terms of your programming, the committee is going to want to see that your programming does impact a significant number of Park County residents. So your application materials should really clearly articulate the intended reach and impact. And then, as has been the case for the past few years, funding priority goes to programs that are aligned with the priorities identified in the We Will Park County visioning process. This is just a screenshot, so I can't actually go into any of these, but please go take a look at this if you have not already. And then there's these 5 buckets of issue categories that we will ask you in the application. Does your program which of those buckets does your program align with? Okay, so as I mentioned, this year we have an alternate application for requests of 3,000 or less, and that is a slightly streamlined application. Our thinking on that is sometimes we have many emerging organizations here in Park County who don't perhaps have as much grant writing expertise, so it's sort of a more streamlined, somewhat easier application to complete. Or perhaps you're a large organization, you have a fairly large project and you just need a little additional infusion of funds to really nail all your goals. So that is out there as an option this year. And I'm just going to go through here and show you a little bit about the differences between the two questions. But just a reminder, I have the overview of the questions here, and all of the applications do in fact take place in our online portal. So the questions are just here for demonstration purposes. So the first section is about your project and program design. So there's some pretty standard questions that you're going to see on both of the applications. And then for the what we're calling the main application, which is the one that does not have a funding cap, we ask you to tell us a little bit more about how your proposal fits within the We Will focus area. So for the 3,000 or less application, you're just going to be checking a box to say which area it is. And then for the main application, you're just going to have to tell us a few narrative sentences about why you selected that area. These are all the questions on both applications are things that we have asked in the past. Statement of condition of need, you're going to be serving, how many residents you'll be serving, and how you're going to define success for your project. Part 2 of the application is letting us know why your organization is well suited to provide that programming. And again, both applications, we're going to want to know your mission statement and either your board of directors or project leaders, whichever is applicable to your situation. The main application, we do a little bit deeper dive. We want to know if you have formal or informal collaborations and partnerships. Have you completed a strategic planning process? And if that was recently, how does your project fit within that process? And then impacts if you've received previous funding from the Community Foundation, what you've been able to accomplish with that funding. And then you do have an opportunity to submit supporting materials. So again, what I'm calling the main application here is the one without the funding cap. Part 3 of the application, project logistics and financial details. So both applications will want to see the project budget and the project work plan. We do realize that sometimes you need to actually have the funds at hand to develop a really detailed work plan, but we would like to know just in broad strokes how you're planning to implement your program. For the main application, we do ask some additional questions. Do you have additional funding sources, either secured or pending? What you would do if we were only able to fund part of your project, your sustainability plan, if your project would in fact require continued funding to keep rolling forward. There is a few more details that we request about your project work plan, and we provide you an opportunity to upload a project work plan document if that's something that you've developed. So again, same general topics, but a little bit deeper dive for the programs of 3,000 or less. We're not necessarily anticipating that you would have additional funding, nor are we anticipating that we would only give you partial funding, nor are we anticipating it's going to be a sustainable project. So for the 3,000 or less, we're making a number of assumptions that it's a pretty discrete short-term project that you will be able to complete with the 3,000 or with the addition of the 3,000. Part 4 of the application is where you get to upload your organizational financials and some other documents. So an organizational budget, statement of financial activity and financial position. You can provide comments on those uploaded materials, and then we'll want to see your 501c3 documentation letter. If you're a fiscally sponsored project, you would include the 501c3 of your fiscal sponsor. And if you're a government entity that's not a 501c3, feel free just to create a document on a Word doc and explain that situation to us. For the one change that we have for the main application is that if you are an organization with a large operating budget or very substantial financial reserves, we are offering you the opportunity to let us know why you need our funding despite having those substantial financial reserves. That question is you get to self-identify whether or not you want to answer that question. There's not a particular limit that we have in mind for that. Okay, as I mentioned, let me just check the chat line. Okay, I see a new message. A substantial reserve. So that is a great question. I'll just speak for ourselves. We at the Community Foundation, we have a pretty significant endowment at this point, but we are choosing not to use our endowment for program. We have that for our long-term financial security. I know there's organizations who apply who own buildings, for example. So your balance sheet is going to look like you have very significant resources, and the actual functioning of your program may be very separated from those resources. This is I'm not sure if that answers your question, Lil. This is a pilot question. I wanted to include it this year because we have had conversations on the grants committee in previous years trying to suss out why an organization might need our funding given that they have a robust balance sheet. And I wanted to give the organizations an opportunity to address that directly. Feel free to reach out either in the course of this Zoom or after we finish if anyone still has questions about that. Okay, so as I mentioned, the questions I was just reviewing with you, those are a summary of the questions. The questions themselves are in fact in the online grants platform, and the link to access this is on our PCCF website page. There's a link that will take you to this. It's a login page here. If you have forgotten your password, there's an easy opportunity to click on that and reset that. Let me know if you have any challenges accessing the online platform. And then when you log into that, you will have your applicant dashboard, and you would check up here to apply. Down here is where you see if you have any active requests. So that's if you had a request in 2021 that we haven't closed out yet because we haven't done those annual reports yet, or if you had a historical request. So you're going to click on, once you're on your dashboard, you're going to click up here to apply. And then once you get to that page, you do have these two separate options, the grant of 3,000 or less, or the main application, as I've been referring to it, which has no funding cap at this time. So that is where you go to apply. Both applications are due at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March 2nd. So some key dates and deadlines, as I mentioned, applications are due on March 2nd. For those of you who received funding in 2021, we're going to ask you to complete your final reports in April. I'll be sending more information out about that later this month. And then we anticipate having funding decisions and checks by May. The next slide here is my time to answer your questions. And I also want to take a moment to show you some other resources that are available. This link here is to the nonprofit network page on our website, where we do have a number of training resources from previous presentations. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share on this so I can change the screen share to this website, but this does have my email address and cell phone number. Hopefully most of you already have my email address, and in my signature line, I consistently have my cell number. So you should have easy access to that. You can also call our main office number and get connected to me. This is the nonprofit network page on the Park County Community Foundation's website, and it's a little tiny. I apologize, but I just want to show you kind of the range of what we have here. So here we have the video link. That's a recording of a presentation we did in December. This next link below it will give you a download of the presentation slide deck. And similarly, we have video links, we have other documents. Most of our grants related things happen in January, February. So January, February of last year, you'll see we have the pitching your project video. We have grant readiness for funding success. That's the slide deck. And then there's a grant readiness checklist. So there's a number of things on this page that are additional training resources. Down at the bottom here, we have some communication strategies, social media trainings. These are things that were done particularly with a focus on the Give a Hoot campaign, but they are relevant to other aspects of nonprofit communication. I realize this list can be a little bit challenging to navigate. So if there's a specific training question you have, reach out and I can point you towards which ones I think would be most helpful. I'm going to now stop.